Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years, a few different styles, but I think it is most definitely fair to say that this brewery is best known for their different kinds of sour beers, although they do a very nice Imperial Stout in my opinion as well. But they are another relatively new addition to the Scottish beer scene, but they have gone on to be one of the most respected craft breweries in the country. And when I come back home to the motherland of Scotland, it's always very nice to try the new beers that they've released. Now, the one that we're going to have a look at today is one that I heard of a little while ago. And I have heard that this is a very good beer, but I just came across a bottle of this one quite randomly. I think this might be the second or third time that they've released this one, so quite glad that I was finally able to get a hold of a bottle of this one. And needless to say, I'm very curious to see what it's going to have in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head through to Edinburgh. We're going to go to Portobello to be specific, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from Vault City Brewing. So this particular beer is called the Sweet Cherry Bakewell Sour. It comes in at 7.5% ABV, and this one is a sour beer with cherries, almonds and vanilla added into the brew. So yeah, not sure exactly when this one was released, but like I say, I just came across a bottle of this one quite randomly, and yeah, very happy for that. But let's crack on with this one and see how we get on. It's always nice to try the new sour beers from Vault City, of course. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Vault City Brewing before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to when I'm at home in the motherland of Scotland. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Vault City Brewing once again. So Vault City Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are from Edinburgh, and the company was founded back in 2018 by Johnny Horn, Adele Wilkie and Stephen Smith Hay. So Johnny worked at the Hanging Bat in the city, and Stephen and Adele were regular customers, and they all just became friends over time. But Johnny is originally from Cardiff in Wales, and he has a background in, I think it was archaeology, if I remember correctly. But he was also a very keen home brewer, as was Stephen. So the two began planning a brewery together, and Adele contributed a lot of the early ideas, and so she joined them eventually as well. But Johnny was a great fan of the Belgian lambic beers and sour beers, and this really began to rub off on Adele and Stephen, and they felt that at this time there was a real gap in the Scottish beer scene for a brewery doing these kind of things, and so the three of them decided that that was the route they were going to take. So initially they didn't think much about making money, and they just set up what they called a glorified home brewing kit as their main brewery in Stephen and Adele's kitchen, and they began brewing weekly there back in July of 2018. But over the following year, they started to visit a few different beer festivals and began spreading the word about their beers, and it went very well for them. They then started brewing their beers at 71 Brewing in Dundee, and they spent a total of 16 months there before moving to their own purpose-built facility in Portobello, just outside of Edinburgh. But during the time in Dundee, Johnny decided that he was going to leave the company and found his own brewery called Holy Goat. He really wanted to focus on brewing lots of different small batches rather than having one kind of base beer and experimenting on top of that. There was a bit of a creative difference, I guess we could say, but all amicable from what I understand. So yeah, you can go and check out his new brewery called Holy Goat, and they do some very nice beers as well. But these days though, Vault City have their Wee Vault bar near Haymarket in Edinburgh, and they're just about to open up their own 250 person music venue at their new brewery. And from what I understand, this music venue has a bit of a connection to King Tut's Wawa Hut through in Glasgow. I think there's someone involved in King Tut's also involved in helping Vault City set this thing up. But as of April 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced over 150 different kinds of beer. The brewery is, of course, really well known for its sour beers. You will find a few different sour IPAs and things like this, and also some imperial stouts every so often. Those are definitely worth checking out as well. And yeah, they're just a very, very good brewery in my experience. But the brewery takes its name, Vault City takes its name from the Edinburgh Southside vaults, which were built into the arches of the Southside Bridge in Edinburgh, and these were home to different workshops and taverns and things like that. So I think it would be very cool if Vault City could get a hold of one of these wee vaults and turn that into a little bar or something like that. But in the meantime, you will need to go to Haymarket Station in Edinburgh to try some of the different beers, and that is somewhere that I do plan on filming at some point in the near future. But yeah, that is all I can tell you about Vault City Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that's everything for your history section in this video. So let's get started and have a little look at this beer itself. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. As you can see, it is very similar to what we've seen from Vault City before. There you can see the typical Vault City symbol, and that is also on the bottle cap of this beer, which is pretty cool. But yeah, it tells you a little bit about the beer on the side here as well. A return to autumnal pairings back from lockdown 2020 is sweet cherry Bakewell sour. So I was right, they have done it before. Locally sourced Tayside sweet cherries are the richest of fruit fillings at the centre of this pastry-inspired sour beer. Biscuit malts provide a firm base topped off by a dusting of delicate almond. Swap your dessert out for a glass of our sweet cherry Bakewell sour. Yeah, so it was pretty good. These beers for me, a lot of people, I have seen people that can kind of session some of these sour beers, but for me, I find that very heavy going. That for me, a sour beer is like a kind of treat beer. It is like a kind of dessert beer, you know, something, you want something sweet, and that's when you go for it. These are tasting beers rather than kind of sessioning beers. Although some people have said the sour IPAs are the same, but again, for me, the whole idea of a sour beer is like a kind of treat beer. But this one is a 375 milliliter bottle. I don't think we need to say anything else about that, to be honest with you. Not sure. So let's crack this guy open and we'll see how we get on. Hopefully, there's nothing explodes out of this one. We just need to see. Yeah, there we go. No, this beer's behaved itself. This beer has behaved itself. So as you can see, a little bit of smoke on the opening there, but as we said earlier, the sweet cherry Bakewell sour, this one is a 7.5% cherry, almond and vanilla sour. So let's get it out into the glass and see how we go. Very curious about this one. Ooh, this is good. We have had a cherry sour, I think it was called, was it Cherry Skies? If I remember rightly, I think we did have Cherry Skies a while ago from Vault City, but we've had a good number of these beers now. It's quite difficult to keep track of exactly what we've had from Vault City, but you know, trying all the different things from them is always fun. But yeah, anyway, there you go. You can see we've got the beer out and into the glass. So before the head disappears on this one, you can see that it's poured with about a 3/4 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of dark pink coloured head there. If we shine the light through this beer, you can see it's actually got a very nice dark kind of maroon colour to it. Since it's from Edinburgh, we can say it's about the same colour as a Hearts football shirt, although I have had Highbees fans on the channel complaining about that. I have got a few regular Highbees fans watching the channel, but yeah, it certainly is the kind of Hearts maroon, I guess we could say. So yeah, lovely kind of, I guess we can say dark, you know, dark red wine sort of colour to this one. You can see it is quite hazy. That will be because of the presence of oats. And has this one got oats? Yeah, this one has oats and wheat in it, and those will be the two elements given this beer the kind of the hazy appearance. But there are one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But when we shine the light through this beer, it is kind of nice, and it is quite nice and hazy. But yeah, it looks the part. So the colour of this one, as we say, depends, when it comes to these sour beers, the colour depends on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use is going to play a role. Two, the length of your wort boil can also change that a little bit. But any adjuncts that you put in will do it. So cherries are obviously very, very dark, and the different varieties of cherries have different colours. This one is obviously a very, very dark cherry, but any barrel aging that you do as well can affect the colour of your beer. But in terms of what you would expect from a cherry sour, this one is definitely not out with the realms of possibility for that. But yeah, I think it does look pretty damn nice, I have to say. Yeah, other than that, I don't think there's anything else we really need to say about the appearance of this beer. The head is just fading away to a very kind of thin. It is fading away to just be a very kind of thin, wispy layer on top. But other than that, nothing else to report. So I don't think we need to say anything else about the appearance of this one. Let's crack on and have a wee look at the aroma of this beer and see how we get on. Very, very curious about this. Oh, right, okay. Now, I'm going to say straight away, the aroma of this one has me a wee bitty worried. So, as I've said on the channel before, the pastry sour is a style that I'm not 100% convinced by. And the main reason, the same with pastry stouts, I'm not the biggest fan of the kind of granola type thing that you get out of these beers. And as soon as I've gone in to smell this beer, I smell that kind of granola, cocoa nib sort of thing in the base of this one. But beers, quite often beers can smell different to how they actually taste. And the thing is, when you sugar up this beer, you get a lot of the big kind of fruity, juicy goodness that you would expect from a Vault City beer. So I'm in kind of two minds about this one. As I say, I've had a couple of pastry sours and just, they've been all right, but I'm not as big a fan of them as the other kind of just regular fruity sour beers that you'll get from Vault City. So we'll need to see how we go with this one. But yeah, first impression of this one is you get that big kind of granola, slightly cocoa nibby type thing forming the backbone of this beer. But then on top of that, you get the kind of juicy, fruity notes and some of the green component coming out of it as well. So yeah, I do like the fruity side of this aroma, but as I say, not 100% convinced by the more malty side of it. But let's try and break this down for you and just describe it a wee bit more. So, backbone of this beer. The backbone of this beer, you've got a little bit of you have got a little bit of bread crust to this one. So yeah, nice little bit of bread crust in there. On top of that, you get a little bit of a kind of smooth brown bready sort of thing for sure. So yeah, you've got that slightly grainy bread crust, you've got that more kind of intense brown bready sort of thing. You definitely get this kind of granola thing. I don't know how good a reference like Knäckebröd is for people in Scotland or elsewhere that are drinking this, but it's like these crackers that we get in Sweden and Denmark that just very kind of grainy, crackery sort of things, but people use them as a kind of alternative to bread actually. But yeah, it definitely has a wee bit of that too. I do get just a little bit of this kind of dry cocoa nibby note out of it as well. And as I say, that sort of Knäckebröd, granola, cocoa nibby sort of thing, that's the basis of the pastry sour, and that's the thing I'm not overly keen on. But yeah, as I say, a bit of bread crust underneath that, the brown bread, then all those layers that we talked about. On top of that, you can smell a little bit of the you can smell a wee bit of that kind of yogurty sort of petit filou type kind of thing. So the oats are giving you a lot of creaminess obviously, and I think it's always the oats mixing in with the fruit that give you this sort of yogurty note. So for me, it reminds me of some of these, you know, Muller yogurts or the Munch Bunch sort of things that my mum used to put in my lunchbox when I was a wee boy. It reminds me of those. So yeah, you definitely get a wee bit of that in there. I do get a little touch of like a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy kind of thing out of this beer. Definitely a wee bit of that for sure. Other than that, there's maybe, you can pick up a little bit of the almond and the vanilla as well. The almond and the vanilla come out of this one really nicely. You can smell that. They give the beer, they come out on the sweeter side of the beer. So the beer definitely has, in the aroma, it definitely has this more kind of grainy, dry side to it. But then you start to get the sweeter side of the malt base as well, the more that you smell of it. So just let your nose adjust a wee bit with this beer actually. You need to keep that in mind. But yeah, aroma wise, I think this one is pretty damn nice, I have to say. So it gets a thumbs up from me. Yeah, I think it's pretty damn solid for sure. The malty side of things, it grows on me. The granola sort of thing that I don't like, it's kind of taken a bit of a back seat the more that I smell of it. And I think in fairness to it, it actually does become a little bit more McVitie's digestive biscuity like the further that you go into the aroma as well. And in fairness, this beer, for a sour beer, actually has quite a little bit of complexity to it. I've said many times on the channel, for me, sour beers are ones that I don't find to be the most complex, but if they're done right, they're just beautiful, beautiful beers. This one actually does have a little bit more kind of complexity to it in the aroma, which is quite interesting. So yeah, let's focus on the hoppy and fruity side of the beer then. I think we've said everything we need to about the malty side of it. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, on the hoppy side of things first, definitely a little touch of earthiness there to the green component. You've got a nice bright floral aromaticity. So yeah, nice bright floral aromaticity, absolutely. You've also got a little bit of a lighter grassiness there, and the sort of green component of this beer is quite wet for me. I find the green component of this beer really quite wet, but yeah, aroma wise, this one is this one's really nice. Yeah, the green component I think just adds a little bit of depth to this beer. And remember, this is one of the great debates with sour beers. Do you add hops into them or do you not? Because the hops can take away a little bit from the sourness of the beer and the fruity character, but it can also, you know, it can also just add a little bit of depth to the beer, I think. And you know, Vault City tend to stick to putting hops in their beers, whereas other breweries, such as the Swedish ones that I really like the sour beers from, Fermenterarna, Duck Pond, these kind of guys, they don't put hops in their beers because they think it takes away from the sourness. So yeah, keep that in mind. But this is very, very nice, absolutely. The green component I think just gives you a little bit more kind of freshness to the beer, which is good. But behind that, of course, you're getting all the kind of fruity notes there, and you can smell those big, big oily cherries coming out of the beer, which I certainly do appreciate. You also have, you also have a few other kind of fruits in there, so you are getting a sort of oily fig and kind of plummy note as well, maybe even a little bit of candied strawberry. You always get these little subtleties with the different sour beers. Yeah, I really like how this one goes about its business, that's for sure. Yeah, aroma wise, I think this beer is very, very nice. It gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I think that works. So, other than that, I don't think there's anything else we really need to say about this one. The fruitiness, this beer has a really nice balance, and it's got a really nice kind of depth to its aroma, I think. So yeah, you've got a bit of the kind of pastry side of it coming out. You do have the sweeter side of the malt too. You get a little bit of hoppiness, but you've also got those big oily kind of fruity characters as well. So yeah, the way that this one goes about its business, I think, is awesome. It gets a big, big thumbs up from me. So as I always say, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma of the beers before, pardon me, you get stuck into them. But yeah, this one is the Sweet Cherry Bakewell Sour, 7.5% ABV from Vault City Brewing in Portobello, just outside of Edinburgh. Let's get stuck into this one. Sláinte, skål, cheers, a cherry sour with almond and vanilla added into the brew. Let's look at this. Cheers. That's nice. That is nice. Now I'm going to say straight away, I didn't like the aroma of this one, but the flavour, the aroma had me a little bit worried because it's been similar to pastry sours that I've not liked in the past. But the flavour of this one is right up my street. I think this is very, very nicely done. So it does, as I say, get a big thumbs up to me. The sort of pastry side of this beer is a lot more subtle than the aroma would have you believe. Yeah. That is very, very nice. Yeah. So the first impression that I have of this beer, it's one of these ones, it starts off a little bit more kind of grainy and pastry-like. The malt base sweetens up the further you go into it. There's a little bit of the hoppiness there as well, but then the fruitiness is really juicy and kind of sharp and things. So I really do like how this, how that goes together in this beer. Absolutely. But as far as memory goes, I don't know if it's maybe just because I've not had a Vault City in a wee while, but as far as memory goes, this actually strikes me as being one of the more sour ones that I've had from Vault City. So yeah, that's pretty interesting, I have to say. I do like how this beer goes about its business for sure, but definitely one of the sharper and more tart sours that I can think of, that I've tried from Vault City. I like this. It gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, interesting stuff. Yeah, so where do we start with this beer then to describe it for you? We'll go with the middle third of the palate then, as we always do. So on that middle third of your palate then, the base of the beer, you can feel it has a little bit, you can feel a little bit of that sort of granola sort of thing that I was talking about. You've got a mix of that kind of granola and bread crust. On top of that, there's a wee bit of a kind of brown bready sort of thing to it. So yeah, absolutely kind of granola, brown bready, granola, kind of bread crusty sort of thing. On top of that, you get the nice kind of, yeah, so granola, it really is like Knäckebröd actually. The more that I have of it, the more it's like that kind of Knäckebröd. But yeah, so that middle third of your palate. Brain's gone a bit funny in this video, guys, and not because of the booze. Just going senile, I think. But yeah, on the base of this beer, so you can feel that sort of bread crusty kind of backbone to it. Then on top of that, you get the Knäckebröd, the sort of granola type thing, and that's a little bit more kind of spicy and things toward the back of that middle third of your palate. But as you move further forward, it kind of smoothens out a little bit, which is interesting. But then on top of that, there is a wee bit of a kind of brown bready sort of thing. And then on top of that layer, that's when you get the kind of creamy, smooth, oaty side of the beer, which I do like. But let's focus on that for a second. So, the kind of creamier, oaty side of the beer, when you move toward the front of that middle third of your palate, in that sort of creamy oaty layer, that's when you get the kind of almond and vanilla side of the beer coming out. As I've always said, you know, more bitter, grainy flavours come out further back on the palate, whereas your sweeter flavours come out a little bit further forward. So yeah, you can feel that kind of vanilla-y, you can definitely feel that sort of vanilla, oaty, yeah, the vanilla, the oat, the almond, that comes out really toward the front of that middle third of your palate, and that smooth oatiness that this beer has, I think, is very, very nice. Yeah, I really do like how that, goes together. The oaty side of this beer is very, very nice. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else we can say about this one. So on top of that oatiness, I think you notice that with the oaty side of this beer, you start to get a little bit of sweetness. So in the dead centre of your palate, you've got like a circle there, and you can feel it has, in the middle of that circle, it has that sort of petit filou yogurt type thing that I was talking about. You know, the kind of munch bunch side of this beer. So you get that really nice yogurty character out of this one. But then the further you go into the aftertaste with it, in that middle third of the palate, you're feeling the more kind of granola type thing coming out of the beer, which I really like. So, yeah, on that side of things, I think it is. On that side of things, I think it's really, really, it's really nice. The malty side of this beer really works for me. But the other thing you're going to notice is that on top of that yogurty side of the beer, you get a little bit of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing, building up with it too. And I really like how that, I do really like how that goes together in this particular beer. There's a few really interesting points in this beer. But I think in terms of a pastry sour, as I say, this is a style that I don't enjoy overly much. I think this one's actually quite nicely done. This is one that could kind of convince me that the pastry sours have some merit, but for me, I do like the more kind of straight up, just fruity and kind of candied sours that you'll get from Vault City. So yeah, as I always say, beer is subjective. Different people like different things, but for me, the pastry sour is one that I'm still not 100% convinced by. The same with the pastry stout. Actually, I'm more into like an imperial milk stout and a straight up fruit sour than I am to a pastry sour or a pastry stout, right enough. But yeah, quite a nice beer, I have to say. I do like it. But I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate on this one. So let's focus. Let's focus on the back third of the palate with this one. So yeah, back third of the palate. For me, the back third of the palate with this beer is kind of similar, but you do get more of the kind of pastry elements out of this one. So in that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of that kind of bready, granola build up in there. Base of the back third of the palate, you can feel that the sort of, you get more of the bread crust, you know, the knäckebröd, the granola type thing, and that layer is thicker. It is absolutely thicker. Then you get a wee bit more of the kind of brown bready note on top of that, and then on top of all of that at the back, the back third of the palate really is about the kind of grainy and pastry side of the beer, if that makes sense. The brown bread, the granola, the knäckebröd, all of these kind of things, those are forming the basis of that back third of the beer. But then on top of that, you do get the yeastiness to it, which is quite interesting. So yeah, the yeasty side of this beer for me, I think works really nicely. The yeasty side of the beer is like, you get a slightly more dense, doughy, brown bready sort of thing. It's a bit sweeter as well, and you do get that kind of sweet bread crusty note out of it. So I really like that, but you can feel on the back third of the palate, the flavour is definitely taller, and then as you come further forward, it just condenses down and squashes together a wee bit more the further that you go into the further that you go forward on it. But I think the malty base in this beer is actually quite complex, and I think it's really nicely done. So it does get a big thumbs up from me. So definitely this is a pastry sour that could convince me to like this style. I will say that about it. So let's focus on the hoppy and fruity side of the beer then. Back corners of the palate, you do get a wee touch of earthiness there, but as you move further forward, it shows a wee bit of herbal quality, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of the palate, it gives you a little bit more of a kind of floral, aromatic sort of thing to it. So yeah, I really like how this one goes together. So lovely, nice kind of bright floral aromaticity, which I think works really well. Round the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and more, it is a little bit lighter and more grassy, which is good. And the green component for me is actually kind of quite wet and quite oily in a sense. So I really do like how that, that goes together. So that gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, green component is quite nice, and I do like this, how Vault City put the hops in the beers, because it just gives the beer a wee bit more depth. But let's focus on the fruity side of things then, the front third of your palate. So the base of that front third of your palate, the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of that kind of granola bready build up again. Then the base of the front third of your palate is a nice kind of smooth, it is a nice kind of smooth oaty type thing, but you do get a wee bit of the knäckebröd granola stuff underneath too, but still very smooth. And on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where the fruity esters come out, and you also get the fruits, the adjunct fruits on top of that. So on the I would say, yeah, on the kind of that fruity side of things, and the sort of hoppy side of the fruits, if you like, the oily part underneath, it does feel like a little bit of a kind of oily figgy note toward the back of the front third of your palate, and then as you move further forward, it gets a little bit more kind of like black curranty or something like this. But on top of that, of course, you've got the big tart oily. You do have the big tart oily cherries in this one, and the cherries are really pretty damn tart in this. And I've said this about Scottish fruits for a long time. The raspberries, the cherries, they're always very sharp and very, very tart. And I do like that with these different sour, with the different Scottish fruit sour beers. And Vault City have always showed that off very nicely. They source a lot of their fruits locally, which I think is great. But yeah, the way that this beer goes about its business in that sense, I think is very, very nice. But you'll find as well that it gets juicier and juicier the further you go into the aftertaste. But the thing you also have to remember is that when you add fruit into beer as an adjunct, it always suppresses a little bit of the bitter side of the beer, so you can feel the juicy fruits just pushing away at the kind of green component of the beer as well, which I think is very noticeable in this beer. But yeah, I think it does work. I think it does work really nicely in this one. So the fruity side of it gets a big thumbs up for me. But yeah, the cherry side of this beer, really tart towards the back, but it kind of mellows out as you come further forward on top of those oily fruits I was talking about as well. And you can feel that nice kind of tartness and oiliness just around the sides of the palate there on this beer. But this one I think is very nice, and certainly a very, very interesting beer. I like what this one, yeah, I do like how this one goes about its business, that's for sure. Yeah, I don't think we need to say anything else about the flavour of this one, to be honest with you. I think we've covered it. So let's just round off this review with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, for me, mouthfeel wise, I think this beer, it is, mouthfeel wise, this beer is I'd say it's mid-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. It's actually quite an oily sour beer, in my opinion. I really like how that, I do really like how that goes together in this one. But yeah, for me, I think this one goes together really, really, really nicely. So yeah, it's quite an oily and slick sour. I would say it's, yeah, it's one of the slightly heavier sours I think I've come across in recent times. But in terms of IBUs, I would say I think it's fairly low, about 10 IBUs at the absolute most, maybe even less than that. The malty side of the beer is nice and smooth. It's got that lovely big kind of creamy backbone to it. But you've also got a bit of kind of graininess and sweetness in the malt base. There's a good diversity to it. It's certainly got a bit of complexity. The fruity side of the beer's got a wee bit of oily character from the hops, but you've also got that big tartness from the fruity adjuncts as well. But I really like how this beer goes about its business. Very, very nice one. And as I say, I wanted to try this beer for quite some time, and it certainly hasn't. Disappointed. I think we can say that. And as I said too, in terms of pastry sours, this is one that could convince me that I quite like this style. So yeah, big thumbs up to Vault City once again. But let's leave it at that. This one is the Sweet Cherry Bakewell Sour, a 7.5%er with cherry, almonds and vanilla added into the brew from Vault City in Portobello in Edinburgh. Really enjoyed this, and I hope that you guys enjoyed my take on it as well. Took me a little time to get my head around it, to be honest with you, but I like it. So let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Vault City as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys once again at some point in the near future. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Vault City's social media, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Slàinte, skål, cheers, see you soon.